Hi, my name is Danica, and today I want to talk about my top 10 books of 2014. This was an interesting list to put together for me because a lot of the books that ended up on it weren't exactly what I thought would. It made me realize that what I value in books isn't so much the reading experience and more what they leave me with, the books that keep me thinking long after I've read them. There were lots of books that I initially loved, but they faded really quickly, and those ones didn't really make it on the list. I also found it funny that this year I read about 2/3 non-lesbian books, more on that in a stats video later. 2/3 of the books on this list are lesbian, and those all have links to their Lesberry reviews in the description. Also, full disclaimer, I cheat massively in this list, so be prepared for that. Without further ado, my top 10 books of 2014. My most surprising pick goes to spot number 10, which is Polymorph by Scott Westerfeld. This is a book that I originally rated 3 stars on Goodreads when I finished reading it. It's one I found disappointing. It's transphobic, and the second half of the plot really bored me. So why is it on my list of favorite books in 2014? It's because I found the failure fascinating. Scott Westerfeld created this premise that is so queer. It's about someone who can shift their body at will, and then completely failed to follow through on it. It was as if his own cis-sexist worldview couldn't actually imagine a person without a binary gender. And the idea of a story that grasps at a concept but can't seem to actually get to it is really interesting to me. And it's one that I've kept thinking about long after I read it. There's also a lot of really great elements to this story, like this 90s cyberpunk vision of the future that is simultaneously realistic and dated. It's not the first one I would recommend people to read, but I would love to discuss this with someone. Number 9 goes to Lies We Tell Ourselves by Robin Talley. This is a young adult book set during the integration of high schools in the southern US. It follows 2 girls, one black and one white, who are on opposing front lines of this movement, and also their unexpected romance. This was not an easy book to read. The main character, Sarah, faces this constant onslaught of vicious racism, including slurs, violence, and humiliation. And then you have to follow one of the characters that's perpetuating it, Linda, which is really uncomfortable. One of the things I loved about this book was the ongoing motif of each chapter being titled with a lie the narrator is telling themselves. Like Sarah's lie number 1, there's no need to be afraid. And Linda's first lie, none of this has anything to do with me. I also just really appreciated the complexity that Robin Talley brings to this story. There's a lot of different subplots and just nuances that are in this story. I definitely think it lives up to the premise. Next, number 8 is Room by Emma Donoghue. You've probably already heard of this book. It was popular a couple of years ago. But this is a story about a woman and her 5-year-old son who have been imprisoned for many years in a room. It's narrated by the 5-year-old boy, Jack, who has been born and raised in this room and thinks that it's the whole world. That already is interesting enough as it is, and the audiobook gets a boost by actually sounding like a 5-year-old boy, which adds a whole level of creepiness to it. But again, it's the subtlety that Emma Donoghue brings to this story that really made me appreciate it, especially the effects of this imprisonment on Jack's mother, and where Emma Donoghue decided the end of the story should be. Again, this is one I was still thinking about months after I finished it. Number 7 goes to The Paying Guest by Sarah Waters. Sarah Waters is my favorite author, so I was both excited and nervous to pick up her newest one. This book definitely lives up to her others, but it's also quite a bleak book. It's surprising that a new Sarah Waters book wouldn't immediately hit my number 1 spot. But that's because I found the reading experience so painful. Even though I appreciated it, I couldn't say that I enjoyed it exactly. Then again, it was also so effective at communicating that emotional strife that I have to recognize it somehow. So here it is. As my review says, it was like having my heart slowly torn out as I read it, so if you like that, pick it up. Number 6 is more of a short story in zine form. Lizzie and Annie by Casey Plett. This is a story about 2 trans women in New York and their romance. It's interspersed with these beautiful watercolor illustrations. I loved this story because it felt so real to me. It's one of the few times I've read dialogue that actually sounds like what me and my friends talk about and how we talk about it. Things like discussion of racism and hangovers, and exes and weird dads, and trans misogyny and BDSM and Facebook. This is a short story and it only covers a couple of days in their everyday life. But the writing and the illustrations are both so evocative. I've bought Casey Plett's collection of short stories, A Safe Girl to Love, which also includes Lizzie and Annie, but without the illustrations. I'm looking forward to reading more by her. Number 5 is Hero Worship by Rebecca Matthews. I have such troubles describing this book. It's basically just about being a 20-something and desperately looking for approval and love and attention, and about trying to deal with this yearning and about trying to hide it. I found myself cringing with sympathy almost every other page, so much so that I found myself constantly constantly having to put it down because it hit a little too close to home, but I loved every sentence of it, and it's definitely one I want to reread. I can't wait for more from this author. Number 4 on my list is Just Girls by Emily Gold. This is a story about 2 women in college, Tucker, a cisgender lesbian, and Ella, a transgender bisexual woman. Ella is starting at a new college, and a rumor has spread that a trans woman student is going to be joining school. When Tucker hears students saying really hateful transphobic things, she kind of accidentally outs herself as the trans student, even though she isn't and doesn't actually know Ella. She's trying to cover for this other student and to prevent her from having to experience this hatred. Immediately, Tucker starts to attract this trans misogyny because people assume that she's a trans woman. Meanwhile, Ella has no idea this is happening. Eventually, Tucker and Ella meet, and this all comes out. This was a premise that I thought could go really wrong. I was really pleasantly surprised by. Again, this is one that has a level of nuance and subtlety that I really appreciated. It has interesting things to say about sexism in science, about the video game community, and about finding support in a lot of different places. It's diverse, it's fascinating, and I wrote a whole essay about it at the Lesbury, so I'll leave it at that. I loved it. Number 3 on my list is House of Leaves by Mark Z. Danielewski. I did a video review of this one, which I will link below. I'll just say this is a layered, fascinating book that will definitely leave you thinking. It's one that I fully intend to reread multiple times, and I know I'll get something different every time. I did have some issues with it, but it was such an experience to read, and it's so impressive of a work. I really recommend it if you want a really different, possibly frustrating, definitely interesting reading experience. If you thought I wasn't cheating so far, that's because spot number 2 goes to all the Tamora Pierce books I read this year. I can't choose just one. I can't even choose just one series. This is just the only book that I own by her. I've been talking about these books on my channel non-stop. I find them so comforting, but they also have fantastic plots, and all the characters are always so three-dimensional and realistic. I actually read 26 books by Tamora Pierce this year, and there were only 3 that I didn't like. If I had to separate them even into series, they would have dominated this list. I think The Circle of Magic is my very favorite series. Her books definitely have a place in my heart now, and I understand why everyone was always raving about her. And my favorite book, well, series of 2014 is probably no surprise if you've been following my channel. It's Adaptation and Inheritance by Melinda Lowe. My roommate is borrowing Adaptation, so I don't have it right now. Again, these are ones I've talked about a lot, but they checked every box for me. First of all, Melinda Lowe is amazing, and she does lots of great things online, like the Diversity in YA website and related things. I was already rooting for her, and it's diverse, but mostly I love these books because Adaptation especially is so action-packed that I could feel my heart racing as I read it, and I haven't had a reading experience like that in a long time. I was so invested that I would start swearing out loud in my living room when there were cliffhangers at the end of chapters. They're also a series that I've started upselling at the bookstore I work at constantly, because I love that I can promote this queer progressive book just by talking about its sci-fi conspiracy plot. So I read some great books this year. This duology definitely earned my top rating. Those are my top 10 books of 2014. Let me know what some of your favorite reads of 2014 were, and if you have a top books of 2014 video, feel free to link it down below and I'll definitely check it out. And thank you for watching. Bye!